Last but not least, I would like to recognize Lutrolo Khubushe, who is our friend and partner, who is the head of Adapt IT, who are friends and partners of the foundation. And I know he does very good things for institutions like Tshwane University of Technology in his other life. Having recognized all the people that are in the program here, as I've indicated, I would like to recognize the rest of the people that are here, because you are a very important part of this event, especially those that, as I look around, were there in 1976, who were throwing stones and ducking bullets. And right in front here, I've got someone, his name is Zukile Nomvete, who was also around and later on left the country, was around in a different way. You are acknowledged with your partner. My wife is also here, and she was also there, Mrs. Malele. I remember when I came back with some wounds at the back, having been beaten thoroughly, she said, "What were you doing?" I said, "I was fighting." Thank you very much. I would like now to invite the National Anthem Choir to say the country's prayer for us, please. The Mbombela Choir. Indeed, if we could do the necessary and stand. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. In 1976, we had a different prayer for the nation and the people of this country. This one is a prayer of national unity. That's important for those that were not there at the time. Without further ado, I'd like to call upon Dr. Ndiadiba Tempia, who is the host here in terms of this campus, as I indicated earlier, to properly welcome us. Thank you very much.
Before I begin with my opening remarks, I would like us to observe a moment of silence for the passing of one of our students. His name is Tamsanga Mashele. He was a third-year diploma law student. May we observe a moment of silence. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you. Vice Chancellor and Principal, Prof. Maluleke, our distinguished guest speaker, Prof. Nalini Moodley. I understand that you turned a year younger a few days ago. Happy birthday. Members of Dr. Sam Nzima family and Dr. Sam Nzima Foundation Board, Office of the Spokesperson in the Vice Chancellor Office, Corporate Affairs and Marketing Directorate, TUT Mbombela Campus and Dr. Sam Nzima Foundation Committee, Organizing Committee, members of the Executive Management Committee, the MEC, amongst us, without necessarily mentioning the names, members of the IMC, Institutional Management Committee, but in particular, the committee that I sit in. I would like to recognize my fellow campus rectors, Prof. Malika. Okay. Maybe let me do this. Prof. Malika and Dr. Lumadi, whose counsel and steadfast support I value dearly. I had a little chat with Prof. Malika before this ceremony, and he was giving me some very interesting tips on how to get things done. Thank you very much. I would like to also acknowledge acting campus rector, Ms. Tanya Lungu, amongst us. But I think most importantly, I would like to also acknowledge Mbombela Campus Management Committee members. Without your support, really, the vision that I have for this campus cannot be realized. I can do this only with your support, and thank you very much for always being there to support this vision. Our dear students that I love so much, the student leadership, I acknowledge you. Dedicated members of staff, especially the people who always work behind the closed doors, the ones who do all the hard work, the operation team that has worked so diligently to prepare for this venue. Thank you very much. Everyone joining us physically, whom I might have left out, I would like to profusely apologize in advance. Everyone joining us here presently that I've not mentioned your name, I see you and I acknowledge you. Sanibonani, Molweni, Dumelang, Awusheni, Dimacheron. Good morning. It is really a profound honor and privilege to welcome you to the 6th Memorial Lecture of Dr. Sam Nzima, held on this historic day marking the 50th anniversary of the Soweto Uprising of June 16, 1976. We gather to reflect on one of the most powerful and indelible images, you know English sometimes, in South Africa history, the photograph of Hector Peterson captured by the late Dr. Sam Nzima. Today we do more than just observing an anniversary, and I want you to pause with me. We pause to honor the extraordinary courage of a young person or young people who rose against oppression, and to examine the remarkable capacity of a single photograph that stirred the global conscience and inspired successive generations and will continue to do so. That iconic image, a young boy mortally wounded, being carried in the arms of a fellow student, his sister running disparately alongside, transcended the immediacy of its tragic moment. What began as a few frames of film evolved into a universal emblem of resistance, sacrifice, and the human toll of systemic injustice. Nearly 5 decades later, Hector Peterson's photograph retains its piercing moral force. It stands as enduring testimony that photography is not merely an artistic medium, but potent instrument of truth, witness, and moral accountability. A great photograph arrests time. It preserves memory and communicates depth of emotions and meaning that words alone often cannot convey. Through Dr. Nzima's lens, the world was compelled not merely to observe a local tragedy in Soweto, but to confront the brutality of apartheid and the fearless dignity of South Africa's youth. That image helped shift international opinion and remains a cornerstone of our collective historical consciousness. As we listen and reflect this morning, let us draw renewed inspiration from both the photograph and the young life it so powerfully represents. May we rededicate ourselves to the principles of justice, equality, and demanding accountability, courage, and human dignity for which they sacrificed so dearly. Their courage was instrumental in birthing the democratic South Africa we inherit today, a freedom we dare not to take for granted. On this solemn occasion of the 6th Dr. Sam Nzima Memorial Lecture, it remains both a privilege and a sacred duty to keep their memory alive and to ensure their legacy continues to illuminate our path. The youth of 1976. We dare not fail them. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your presence, whether physical or virtual. Your participation enriches this occasion. Let us make this morning a deep reflection, meaningful engagement, and renewed commitment. As TUT, this renewed commitment should also serve as a reminder of our commitment to the values of our institution, particularly those values of diversity, accountability, and stewardship to serve one another. But before I conclude, let me take this advantage to go beyond what I've been tasked to do. As the campus rector of Mbombela campus, I see in the image of Hector Peterson 2 enduring responsibilities. First, to safeguard education as a space of possibility, where students are empowered to acquire knowledge, question, innovate, create, and imagine futures beyond inherited limitations. So thank you, Prof. Maluleke, for entrusting me with this huge responsibility. I hope I have not disappointed you so far. But secondly, as the campus rector, it is my duty to listen to the voices of young people. Because June 16 reminds us that students are not only recipients of education, they are participants in shaping society. This is what we hope to inculcate in this campus. So welcome to the 6th Memorial Lecture of Dr. Sam Nzima, and welcome to Tshwane University of Technology, Mbombela campus, the most beautiful campus. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Campus Choir. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. It's good punctuation of this part of the program. And I must thank Makazi Njelele to have actually welcomed all of us and made us feel
welcoming the attendant here. But the program director, Professor John Tshwane, is also part of the board member of the Sam Nzima Foundation, is managing this particular program. But in essence, the conversation is going to be about that iconic photo, the enduring relevance of the iconic June 16 photograph taken by Dr. Sam Nzima. A lot will be discussed here in terms of his brazenness, the space, the locus, if you like, of that picture within the broader context of the struggle for freedom. So we'll be bringing you blow-by-blow report here of what is happening, a piece-by-piece account of what is happening here, as we're going to be taking you live into the venue where conversations will be happening. We'll be taking some of the speakers as they come through. We do have the Mbombela choir as well that will be serenading us in between the occasion as well. So it's going to be a complete day of advanced discussion on who this man is. Of course, died only 83 years of age on the 12th of May in 2018. Was born in Lilydale, in fact, in a village in Bushbuck Ridge, and grew up in a farm. So that's the nature of a humble beginning, and we're going to go back now live to the podium where Mr. Tshwane Nzima, who is the Sam Nzima Foundation chairperson, is on the podium and talking to us. Let's go live now to the podium.
I think you are forcing me to think on my feet. It's a bit uncharacteristic in a gathering of this nature, which is characterized by professors and doctors and all those kind of protocols, for me to introduce the Vice Chancellor. I have learned from the Nigerians that when you are asked to perform a task of this nature, you must first resist and protest that you cannot be the right person to do this. And I'm looking around to say, if is there anyone I can say, why don't you ask Dr. Nyalungu to do this kind of thing, and why me? But I suppose one of the reasons why you want me to do this is to reflect on the deeper relationship that we have established with the Vice Chancellor and Principal of the Tshwane University of Technology. So thank you very much, Mwanati. I have the privilege to introduce you, and you have also instructed that I don't say too many things except to indicate that you are in fact a very prolific writer. and each time you ascend the podium, I feel inspired, and many of you would do so. My wife was giving a characteristic last night of your glowing personality when you speak, and I can attest to that. To say you are actually that glue that has put this event together. You are the glue that makes sure that the TUT and Sam Nzima Foundation stays together. I'm not going to sound pessimistic in any way, but let's also be aware that this relationship is not about personalities. It is not about Tulani and the Vice Chancellor. It is between institutions, and therefore it should be enduring. With that, Vice Chancellor, the privilege for you to address us kindly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I didn't realize how much English you know, Tulani. I am impressed. Rector of the Mbombela campus, Dr. Ndiadiva Tempia, I will acknowledge all the protocol that you observed. There is no way I will ever be able to do it as eloquently and as accurately, as elegantly as you have done. Now you are becoming famous for being Khadzia Njerere, Chisimani Chababikwa na Dombo, na bazifunana, vahanyankwita vanderedza mapango. The TUT executive team, members of the IMC, I see that we have managed today to raise the CFO from the grave. He is here in our midst. The brilliant students and the indomitable staff members of the Mbombela campus. Professor Nalini Moodley, our distinguished keynote speaker, Executive Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Design, you have no idea how proud we are to be called your colleagues, and how proud we are for you to have taken the task of not only speaking to us today, but of leading one of the most important faculties in the university, the Faculty of Arts and Design. I'm sorry for engineering, if engineering is here, because they think they are the most important, and they are wrong. Arts and Design is. Mr. Tshwane Nzima, Chair of the Sam Nzima Foundation, and members of the board. Emdenini wakwanzima, ngiyakhuleka. Ngikhuleka ngokukhulu ukuzithoba. Kuwe Mazibuko, nakuwe Mwelase. Ngiyabingelela Zikode, Khondlo, Manzezulu. Ngisukuma nje angiphethe lutho esandleni, angiphethe mzekeliso, angiphethe nganekwane, anginayo ngisho nensumansumane. Yebo, ngeswela amagama okunibonga, amangwe amahle, Nzima emnyama. What a special day the 16th of June 2026 is. What a beautiful occasion the Sam Nzima Annual Memorial Lecture is. In my capacity as Vice Chancellor and Principal, I wish to thank you for this very special of all the partnerships that we have as a university, namely the partnership between ourselves and the Sam Nzima Foundation. Ours may not be the most lucrative partnership, but ours is a partnership of the highest value, way beyond rands and cents. Together, we have been assigned the sacred task of preserving the work and the legacy of one of the greatest South Africans in the past century, half of which we commemorate today. TUT is honored to join with you in the preservation of the memory of a South African treasure, Dr. Sam Nzima. TUT could not have found a more suited kindred spirit than Dr. Sam Nzima, who was a born entrepreneur, determined from a young age to use his Pentax camera, both to make a living and to make history, both to change his own life and to change the course of the history of our country. At TUT, entrepreneur is not a noun and it is not an adjective. It is a verb and it is a way of being. At TUT, we entrepreneur the future together. While others may regard entrepreneurship as an optional extra and a nice to have, for us at TUT, entrepreneurship is the cross-cutting graduate attribute of the 21st century. Entrepreneurship is the confluence where theory meets praxis, the confluence where science embraces application, the confluence where knowledge making combines with policy making. Indeed, entrepreneurship is that place where all academic subjects come together to dance the dance of life beyond the classroom. While others speak of only employability, we at TUT suggest that entrepreneurship is the most effective response to the unemployment crisis among the youth in our country and continent. While others may speak only of producing graduates with the skills which the job market needs, we at TUT go further and suggest that individually and single-handedly, neither the academia nor industry has what it takes to respond to the fast-changing 21st century job market. Look around you, and you will see that the job market no longer knows what jobs it needs now, less so what jobs it will need in the future, in the next 5 to 10 years. That is why at TUT we are seized with the notion of the future of work, a future we and our students are not prepared merely to sit and wait for. It is a future we are taking by the scruff of the neck, a future we are actively entrepreneuring. We are partnering with industry at a rate and at a level that our peers have never seen before. They don't call us the Entrepreneurial University of Technology for nothing. If you check the UniRank stakes for 2026, you will see that TUT is ranked number 34 on the continent and number 13 in South Africa, as well as around 1,000 in the whole world out of 2,000 universities. In fact, among those universities with the tag University of Technology in the whole continent of Africa, we are number 2. But because not every university with the tag University of Technology is really a University of Technology, it's possible that we are number one. On the downside, there are universities which do not have the Tech University of Technology, which are in fact doing technology very well, and we ought to be wary of them. The Tshwane University of Technology is not only equipping students with 4IR, we are also teaching and training the new kid on the block. Her name is AI. We are teaching AI the good values of resilience, excellence, diversity, accountability, and stewardship. And we want to do this before others teach AI to lie, to cheat, and to steal. And some of them have already started. It stands to reason, therefore, that at TUT, we are not mere adopters of AI, made and trained by others for ends that may not be aligned with our values and with our mandate. Instead, TUT is entering the fray. TUT is in the AI back room where algorithms are made. TUT is deep inside the AI factory, entrepreneuring the digital future of our country and continent. They don't call us an AI hub for nothing. Gone are the days when professors alone determined and crafted curricula behind the backs of industry. Gone are the days when industry stood outside and waited for universities to single-handedly produce the perfect worker graduate 3 to 4 years later. At TUT, we are bringing industry into the classroom from first year to first job. And that is how and why we are producing graduates who are ready to be unleashed as entrepreneurs, regardless of their academic disciplines, graduates of impeccable ethical conduct. To conclude, let me recall the words of the psychiatrist, scholar, and revolutionary from Martinique and Algeria, Frantz Fanon, who once said, and I quote, "Each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it," end of quote. 50 years ago, Dr. Sam Nzima's generation discovered their mission and went on to bravely fulfill it. It is the turn of this generation of South Africans to rediscover its own mission. If, for example, you ask me, what is the mission of today's generation of young people? I will say to you, the mission of today's generation of young people is threefold. Firstly, it is education. Secondly, it is education. And thirdly, it is education. Education will not make you as materially rich as some of those blokes and guys who, like sand in the hourglass, are appearing before the Madlanga Commission in these days of our lives. But I am yet to find a person who can prove to me that acquiring skills and getting entrepreneurial education has made them poor. Ngingazi ke ukuthi nine nifuze bani. Kodwa mine ngifuza uDokotela uSam Nzima owayelwa ngekhamera ngekhathi abanye belwa ngezibhamu nemikhonto. Ngifeditse nje kwala, as they say in isiSwati, ngicedzile, let me sit down. I thank you.
Professor Tinyuko Maluleke, the Vice Chancellor and Principal of the Tshwane University of Technology. Screamingly funny, you can tell even the crowd behind the scene. He's a rancotier of note, and oftentimes than not leaves the crowd in stitches when he climbs to the podium. But again, talking about the legacy, whether the country will betray it, whether the country will fulfill the mandate, and was referring back to the Dr. Sam Nzima's generation, the fact that they found the mission, not only found it, but fulfilled it bravely. That's some of the words that he had to use there. In a moment, we're going to be going back to the podium. Some of the speakers that we expect to hear from is Dr. Herman Botes, who's of course the Assistant Dean at Teaching and Learning at the Faculty of Arts and Design. Those being some of the people we expect to have a conversation with. Of course, you can sit and listen as we bring some of the speakers who are on the podium now, who will join us here on the touchline to have a conversation specifically about the relevance, the enduring relevance of the iconic June 16 photograph taken by Dr. Sam Nzima. One of the key speakers today, of course, is Professor Nalini Moodley, who's the Executive Dean at the Faculty of Arts and Design. We're looking forward to hearing from her. Let's go back to the podium now. And of course, on the podium now is the Sam Nzima Foundation Chairperson, Mr. Tshwane Nzima.
Making sure that we set the scene.
They say it doesn't matter what the voters have said. What matters is who counted the votes. So in my case, it matters who marked my script. It is the professor who marked my script. He said, I am learned, I can speak good English, and that's good enough. The Vice Chancellor never ceases to amaze me with his deep research of things important in life. Mekuzi thakazelo zakamazbuko umanzi ezulu umwelase ukhondlo nozikode kalanga sikhona thina simlalele kodwa simangala ukuthi hayibo nangu uprofessor isifundiswa sisiqala phansi siyogcina nathi omazbuko siyabonga omgabi nami angithi egameni lenu nina amangwamahle omgabi wamafu ogaba phansi naphezulu siyanimukela siyabonga bakhona kwenu le ikwaya ike yacula iculo ngathi lishaya emanonini kancane bengithi bazosiphinda ngalo kodwa ke akusenani ngoba isikhathi sesambili. Let me also cut through the protocol and recognize the Vice Chancellor. Thank you so much for joining us. Professor Nalini Moodley, your presence here means a lot. Our host, Campus Rector, Dr. D. Tempier, the Nzima family, the board, and all of you, thank you very, very much indeed. This is a very important day today, and as we commemorate and celebrate this day, I want us to reflect and share some of the curious facts that I've picked up looking at this day. Today marks 50 years since the June 16 Soweto student uprising and the death of Hector Peterson. Did you know that Hector Peterson was 13 years at the time of his death, and today he would have been 63? Antoinette Stolle, who's screaming and shouting next to Mboisa Makubo, in 1976 she was 17 years old, and today she is 67 years old. Sam Nzima was 42 years old when he captured that important picture. He died at the age of 83 and a bit, just before completing 84, which would have made it 42 times 2. And do you know that it actually took 22 years for him to fight for the copyrights of that important picture. It's now 28 years since Sam Nzima got his copyrights, which was in 1998. I learned from Prof. Maluleke last night as a reminder that we are a nation of complaining and complaining, and ubaba uKhobushe naye uke wangikhumbuza at some stage uthi yeke ukucomplaina thulana ukukhulume nje into eclean. Hayi ke namhlanje ngikhuluma ngento eclean, but let me also tell you, it took the government in terms of our new democracy, they only recognized Dr. Sam Nzima and his contribution to this democracy in 2011. That was 17 years into our new democracy and 35 years since the picture was taken. So for me, it's a kind of a back of the bubblegum chappies thing. You remember that? Did you know? Did you know? So as we celebrate and commemorate this day today, it raises some deep questions for me. It talks to the enduring, iconic, but significantly impactful, timeless, and historic nature of this picture. There's no doubt that the Hector Peterson picture image has achieved iconic status. So for a picture to be characterized as having achieved iconic status, there are a few characteristics that it must meet, and I want to share this with you because I really believe that this picture has ticked all the boxes. The picture is listed amongst 3 world images as icons of war photography. And it is listed amongst, at the time when I did my research, I'm just putting that disclaimer just in case your AI gives you something different. So at the time it was compared to 3 very important pictures. The first one was the Vietnam War on June the 8th, 1972, the Vietnamese children fleeing the napalm strike, the picture taken by Nick Ut. The second picture that it compares to is the Spanish Civil War in September, on the 5th of September, 1936, the Falling Soldier, a picture taken by Robert Capa, and in third place, it was the Soweto Uprisings, June 16, 1976 picture of Hector Peterson taken by Dr. Sam Nzima. I need to pause and welcome the family that just stepped in now. It is the Mboweni family, bathi ngeSiswati amatalankosi, bazala thina, oNzima, oThulani, oBongani nomadoda, oMboweni, nangu mamncane usanda kufika manje nendodakazi yakhe nomalume uDouglas. Siyabonga. So those of you who may not know this, the place where we buried Dr. Sam Nzima here in Mpumalanga, in Lilydale, was facilitated by Umalumu Douglas. It is a 3.5 hectare piece of land where our dream, Vice Chancellor, is to build the Sam Nzima Legacy Center. So we will always honor you, Malume, for that vision of making sure that where we have buried Sam Nzima will become a monument, and his grave will become a symbol of resistance. So thank you very much for joining us. So the Soweto June 16 picture, as I was saying, has had the characteristics that that I was sharing with you. This picture encapsulates the following attributes descriptive of an iconic image. Firstly, its aesthetical composition conjures collective consciousness of the viewer. You will decode that. It creates deeper connection with the exact moment a photograph was taken. It depicts the forceful nature of the event itself in June 1976. Historical reference images represent the wars or conflicts in which they were taken. It is strongly anchored in collective memory by those who witnessed the moment and captures those that are viewing it. No image captures the brutality and horror of the apartheid rule in this heart-wrenching photograph, like this heart-wrenching photograph by Dr. Sam Nzima. This picture remains one of the single most important images to emerge from the South African struggle. This photograph captures humanity in all its terrifying vulnerability. It asserts that an event known through photograph certainly becomes real than it could have been without seeing those images. The paradox about this iconic picture, though, is that whereas the image of Hector Peterson is recognized by the majority of South Africans and the world over, only a few are familiar with Dr. Sam Nzima, the man behind the picture. I'm not complaining. But very few people actually know this. This image has been reproduced onto T-shirts, posters, newspaper front pages, and thereby became a visual symbolism of June 16. The iconic status of this image is further reinforced by those comparing its composition to the Pieta image of suffering seen at Regina Mundi Church. Remember that? The statue of depicting Mary holding Christ's lifeless body. Sam Nzima's picture had become the iconic image of the liberation struggle and its fortitude for freedom in one single photograph. It comprised the brutality of the apartheid regime against the resilience of people for freedom and consciousness. Without the Hector Peterson photograph, the very Hector Peterson Museum wouldn't take the shape and stature that it carries now. That's why we want to protect this image from overexposure, thereby leaving a dulling feeling for future use. So we thank you all for choosing to attend this event with us. We are not going to give you any T-shirts for having attended this event, but we respect the fact that you chose to be here. Thank you very much.
Apologies, I forgot one thing. When you are impressed with what the chairman says in the future, please throw money. That's what he prefers for the Sam Nzima Foundation. And let me thank you, Mr. Chairman, and remind you that your talent has been recognized earlier today. But if my memory serves me well, you were also earmarked as a potential recipient of an honorary doctorate from TUT, if my memory serves me well.
photograph taken by Dr. Sam Nzima. Of course, Professor Nalini Moodley will join in on that particular discussion. And as you listen to some of the speakers talking, you then realize that this is more than just a picture, because this is a man who put his life on the line. Reports of stones flying over his head. Especially somebody was raising the point that it was at a time when the apartheid regime wanted at all costs to suppress the truth from going out into the international community. The apartheid regime that wanted to argue that there's nothing really wrong in South Africa. There is no apartheid in South Africa. And that picture, in one form or another, kind of blew the lead and exposed the atrocities at that time. We're going to go back in a moment as Dr. Herman Bottas, of course, will be climbing onto the podium, will be, of course, introducing the keynote speaker. She's the Assistant Dean at the Teaching and Learning, the Faculty of Arts and Design. That is going to be happening in a moment, and then we'll move to the keynote speech from... We go back to the stage. Dr. Herman Bottas will be climbing there, the Assistant Dean at Teaching and Learning at the Faculty of Arts and Design.
Whom we describe as a keynote speaker. Dr. Bottas.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, colleagues, members of the Sam Nzima Foundation, the students and friends of the Tshwane University of Technology, it is my privilege to introduce and welcome our keynote speaker to the Sam Nzima Memorial Lecture, Professor Nalini Moodley, Executive Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Design at the Tshwane University of Technology. We gather today in honor of Dr. Sam Nzima, in recognition of his extraordinary contribution to South Africa's visual, political, and historical memory. TUT, and specifically the Faculty of Arts and Design, posthumously awarded Dr. Sam Nzima an honorary doctorate in 2020. So it is therefore deeply fitting that Professor Nalini Moodley deliver this memorial lecture with a university and a faculty that recognizes the power of image, storytelling, creative practice, and the arts to shape public consciousness and to advance social justice. So Professor Moodley's leadership as an Executive Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Design has been marked by a clear and sustained belief in the transformative role of the arts. Since her appointment as Executive Dean in 2018, she has guided the faculty in strengthening its local, national, and international profile, while positioning art and design not only as creative disciplines, but as vital forms of civic engagement, critical dialogue, and social change. So central to her leadership is the concept of artivism, the use of the arts as a powerful means of confronting social, cultural, and political injustice. Under her leadership, the faculty hosted the inaugural International Artivism Conference themed Embracing Cultural Activism for a Safe and Just World in 2024. This important work will continue when later this year the faculty will host the second international conference, Reimagining Futures, Art, Design and Artivism in Global Transformations. Professor Moodley has also led significant work in the area of gender justice, particularly through the faculty's research niche area focused on confronting gender-based violence and femicide through artivism. This work brings together creative practice, research, advocacy, and public engagement in ways that seek not only to raise awareness, but also to contribute meaningfully to prevention, healing, and social transformation. In August this year, the faculty will host its third GBV symposium, Resonant Voices, Artivism Against Silences. Professor Moodley holds a BA in Fine Arts, a master's degree in Arts History, and a PhD in Art History from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She brings to her leadership more than 3 decades of experience across primary, secondary, and tertiary education sectors. And in recognition of her contribution to higher education leadership, she received the HRSA Higher Education Women in Leadership Award in 2024 and continues to serve as a mentor through HRSA, Helm, and the University of Cape Town. Professor Moodley's work reminds us that art are never neutral. They can bear witness, challenge silence, honor memory, and open new possibilities for justice. This is especially meaningful today as we remember Dr. Sam Nzima, whose lens captured not only a moment in history, but a call to conscience that continues to speak to us. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker for the Sam Nzima Memorial Lecture, Professor Nalini Moodley. Before we applaud, I just want to ask that our colleagues please don't sit in front. She would like to address you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. May I ask the choir to augment the introduction of the keynote speaker, please? The choir, as we take new positions down there.
We are indeed still live from the Mbombela campus. It's the 6th Dr. Sam Nzima Memorial Lecture. Now we have the choir climbing onto the stage to make space then for Professor Nalini Moodley, who's going to come in as the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Design. 30 years of teaching experience across the primary, secondary, and tertiary division. She's waiting there as the choir in Professor's word augment the introduction. That conversation and her speech is going to be coming in a moment. You expect conversations today to touch specifically on issues around this enduring relevance. And I was saying, especially within the context of a South Africa whose democracy is seriously under attack. You had Professor Tinyuko Maluleke raising the Madlanga Commission issues there. That is completely besides the point. The focal point, which I'm willing to take Prof on, is a number of facts that he has raised on his speech, and I think it will make for an incredibly interesting discussion. We're looking forward to having a conversation with him. As I said, the choir is on stage. In a moment, they're going to be making way then for Prof to come through, who's just waiting, and looking forward to what she has to tell us about the significance of a day like this. A man who started really from humble beginning out in Lilydale, raised in a farm, lived in a farm with a family. And it's incredible that today we honor such a man, Dr. Sam Nzima, who we are told the legacy project is planned on his name that will celebrate the visual arts and anything that is arts related, which speaks to the enduring legacy, once again, quite apart from the picture, the enduring legacy of a man whose picture has now seized the world stage on a day like this, the 16th of June, a day that is quite central to South Africa's democracy, central to South Africa's struggle for freedom, central to South Africa's liberation struggle. These discussions are more than just a picture. This is really about defining the legacy that at times may have been misunderstood, at times may have been misrepresented, at times may have been all sorts of mistakes being made around this particular legacy. And Prof was saying earlier on that it becomes important then to right the wrong, as it were, correct where history may have been, well, manipulated, if you like. And it is conversations like this, it is platforms like this in an institution that really puts its mandate at the center of recognizing people who are central or are still central, even if they are late, to the legacy of South Africa and the course of history that Prof was talking about. In fact, that picture going to as far as changing the trajectory of the country and where we are going. And it is safe to say, as I was saying earlier on, this is a man who could have lost his life when the apartheid regime at that time was targeting everyone who was communicating to the world the atrocities at the time. And you need to sit back and look at just how much he placed himself in a line of danger by just simply choosing to take that particular picture. That picture would remain and resonate with the world years later. Let's go back to the podium in a moment. As I said, Professor Nalini Moodley is going to come through to address the people, the choir still on the stage at the moment. And still, of course, to come, we'll have some reflection from some of the keynote addresses that we have had here. We've heard, of course, Professor Tshwane University touching on this. Mr. Tshwane Nzima, who's the chairperson, have spoken about his father and his legacy. We heard from Dr. Herman Buot as well. But in a moment, as I said, Professor Nalini Moodley, whose speech is going to be really the focal point, the cynosure, if you like, of the event itself. So that is coming up in a moment as we are listening now to the Mbombela choir serenading us in between the important events. So we'll be crossing live to the podium in a moment to hear exactly what Prof has to say. But then again, we will hear of Mr. Nzima, who will be giving the Nzima family tribute. And we are humanizing Mbuyisa Makhubu, the man carrying the Hector Peterson picture on the 16th of June in 1976. Mr. Charles Makhubu, who is a family member, is here. And it does not get more similar than a family speaking about one of their own. So that those are some of the conversations you can really expect. We expect as well the announcement of student photo competition winners. So somebody will go with something here. Dr. Emily Mabote, who's the acting deputy vice chancellor in the digital transformation, is going to be doing those honors. And we'll wrap up, of course, with Mr. Luxolo Robosha, who is going to give us the vote of thanks and an announcement. So in a moment, then we'll be going back to the podium.
Vice-Chancellor and Principal, Professor Tshwane University, Deputy Vice-Chancellors, members of the Executive Committee of TUT, our campus rector, Dr. Tempia, and all other campus rectors today, members of the CMCs, executive deans, assistant deans, HODs, chair and members of the Sam Nzima Foundation, Mr. Nalini Moodley, and friends and family of Dr. Sam Nzima, staff and students of TUT's Mbombela campus, members of the Faculty of Arts and Design, and the leadership of the local campus SRC, and of course our program director. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm a little bit worried, and I was saying to Vice Chancellor, I'm not quite sure what I must say now, because all the speakers before me spoke so eloquently about the iconic photograph. So please bear with me. I think I have a tough string of speakers to follow today. But it is really an honor and a privilege to have been invited to deliver the 6th annual Sam Nzima Memorial Lecture on what is truly a momentous day. And I do not take lightly the weight on my shoulders today to speak on Youth Day 50 years later. And I hope I can take you on a journey that is really enriching for all of us. The title of my address is The Enduring Relevance of the iconic June 16th photograph, which you see here in front of me, taken by Dr. Sam Nzima. As we gather today, we do so at a significant historical moment, the 50th anniversary of the Soweto uprising of June 16, 1976. But 2026 occupies a remarkable place in South Africa's historical calendar. It is a year in which several significant anniversaries converge, inviting us not only to remember the past, but also to reflect critically on the journey that has brought us here to the present. This year marks 70 years since the Women's March of 1956, when 20,000 women from across South Africa marched to the Union buildings in Pretoria in one of the most powerful acts of collective resistance in our history. 2026 also marks 30 years since the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa was signed into law in December 1996, establishing a democratic framework founded upon human dignity, equality, and freedom. And of course, 2026 marks 50 years since June 16, 1976, when thousands of school children took to the streets of Soweto in protest against an education system designed to deny them both opportunity and humanity. But did you also know that 2026 also marks the 200th anniversary since the dawn of the art and science of photography? In 1826, Joseph Nicephore Niepce produced what is widely recognized as the first permanent photograph. The photograph, one of modernity's most ubiquitous visual forms, since then has pervaded our experience of the world. These anniversaries collectively tell a larger story about South Africa and about ordinary people confronting extraordinary injustice. Justice L.B. Sachs captured this powerfully when he observed that it was, and I quote, photography that dealt more with the defiant and innovative representation of the ordinary than with the ordinary depiction of heroic, unquote. They tell the story of women demanding recognition, of young people demanding educational freedom and asserting their agency, and of a nation seeking to build a democratic future from the ruins of apartheid. But for those of us working in universities, and there are many of us today, the anniversary of June 16th holds particular significance primarily because it was an uprising about education. It was about who has the right to learn, who determines the language of learning, whose knowledge is valued, and ultimately what kind of society should education serve. The students who marched on that winter morning were bravely challenging an education system that sought to define the limits of their aspirations, and in doing so, they fundamentally transformed the relationship between youth, education, and political agency in South Africa. But of all the anniversaries we mark this year, June 16th occupies a unique place because of how much we remember. How much we remember is mediated through a single photograph. Captured by Sam Nzima, the photograph of Hector Peterson being carried through the streets of Soweto has become one of the most recognized images in South African history. And 50 years later, it remains far more than a photograph. It is a document, a visual text, and a memorial. But it will always be a political statement. And perhaps most importantly, it is a reminder of the profound power of images to shape how society remember, understand, and respond to history. This anniversary serves as a key marker of South African history, a marker where more than 176 young people were lost to this country, a marker of great potential that was lost to our beloved country. In human terms, 50 years is a considerable span of time. It's long enough for new generations to be born, educated, and assume positions of leadership. It is long enough for societies to transform and for nations to redefine themselves. Indeed, the question of how South Africa has sought to redefine itself over the past half-century remains one of the most compelling issues for our democracy. Therefore, this 50th anniversary invites us to pause and reflect on where we have come from, what we have learned, what we have achieved, and perhaps most importantly, what remains unfinished. It asks us to revisit one of the defining moments in South Africa's history and to consider its enduring significance for education, for youth, and for the ways in which we remember or remember. Remembering, you see, is not easy. When we remember, we collect the scattered parts of our minds, our experiences, our identity, and we reassemble them so that we can be whole again. Therefore, in order for us as a country and a people to move forward as a whole, we must remember. But in order to remember, we need triggers. You need to find something on which to focus, and there is always, this is where the criticality of photography comes into play. When you see an image, despite whether you remember or not, you now remember the moment as it happened. You feel those feelings yet again, and you hear those sounds as though it just happened. Thus, photography and the photograph, despite its content, I mean, it could be a photograph of a child laughing, or you dancing, or a moment at a wedding, or a celebration. Whatever the photograph, it is a reassembling and a remembering of a moment forgotten. It is a remembering of something past that is realized and manufactured for us in the present. Yes, and sometimes the image captured might emerge slowly into public consciousness, while others violently jolt a collective conscience and become so powerful that they illuminate not just a single event, but an entire historic epoch. Sam Nzima's photograph of the dying Hector Peterson in 1976 did exactly that. This morning, together, we will revisit that moment from 50 years ago, and we will examine that image that emerged from one of the darkest periods of our history. And like a photograph that is slowly revealing itself in a developing tray in the darkroom, I hope that by the end of our time together, we will see more clearly not the photograph only, but also what it continues to tell us about memory, resistance, education, justice, and the power of visual testimony. The request from our Vice-Chancellor for this address was to focus on the photograph. A photograph that has been burnt in our consciousness for the past 50 years. While some photographs record history and some help us understand it, a very rare few force us to change it. Yet iconic photographs do not create themselves or emerge spontaneously. Behind them stands an individual whose justice, whose courage, whose instinct and judgment transformed a fleeting moment into a permanent historical record. So before turning to the photograph itself, to look at its significance, it is important that we first consider the man behind the lens. Sam Nzima worked during a period when photography occupied a unique position as both witness and evidence. Long before the age of digital manipulation, social media, and citizen journalism, the photograph possessed a particular authority as a record of lived reality. It was through the lens of courageous photographers that South Africa and the world came to confront the everyday violence of apartheid. Dr. Nzima belonged to a remarkable generation of photographers that included figures such as Alf Kumalo and Peter Magubane, whose work built upon the visual traditions established by pioneers including Ernest Cole, Ellie Weinberg, and Jürgen Schaderberg. Together, these photographers created a powerful visual archive of life inside apartheid, documenting both the brutality of the system and the resilience of those who resisted it. Some, such as Ernest Cole, carried their images into exile. His seminal work, House of Bondage, in 1967, ensured that the realities of apartheid reached international audiences, even as he himself was forced to live beyond South Africa's borders. Dr. Sam Nzima's experience was markedly different. While Cole and countless South Africans experienced exile externally and geographically, Nzima experienced what might be described as a form of internal exile, a descriptor I borrow from Henry Kamen's concept in The Disinherited. Kamen uses the term to describe individuals who, while remaining physically within their country, are effectively excluded from full participation in its cultural and intellectual life, and by so doing are completely marginalized. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be pointing. Can we go to the next slide, please? Following the publication of the Hector Peterson photograph, Nzima became the subject of state surveillance, restriction, and intimidation. He was prevented from working as a photojournalist and was in many respects silenced by the very system his camera had exposed. Although he remained in South Africa, he was denied professional and creative freedoms that had defined his work. He therefore functioned within the parameters of an internal exile, which is to say, he was marginalized in the extreme, to the extent that his iconic image was lost to him for approximately 22 years. This dimension of Sam Nzima's story is important because it reminds us that the photograph's global circulation came at a deep and great personal cost. While the image achieved international prominence, the photographer himself was for many years denied the recognition and freedom that such a mammoth contribution deserved. And so, understanding Sam Nzima's legacy and his iconic photograph is complex, as we must weigh the meteoric rise of the image against the internally exiled, silent eclipse of the man behind the lens. While we do so, we must understand that as a photojournalist, you have only what Gary Knight refers to as a fragile existence, with only the authorship of your work as both your income and critically as your legacy. So when viewed holistically, the legacy of the 50th anniversary demands much of us. Is a public holiday enough? Is a musical enough? Is a movie enough? A lecture enough? What then is the most enduring way to remember this day 50 years ago, when amidst the chaos and mindless execution of children, Sam Nzima had his viewfinder firmly focused on the human tragedy that was swirling around him? Today, we're not just recalling an image. The next slide, please. But we are remembering a moment in which photography itself, as an art form, altered the moral consciousness of the world. The image of the dying Hector Peterson being carried by Mbuyisa Mkubu while his sister Antoinette Sitole runs beside them in anguish became one of the key defining visual texts in apartheid South Africa. The apartheid state could censor speeches, they could imprison activists and ban organizations, but it could not silence an image once the world had seen it. That is the power of a photograph and the power of art. But the power of photography serves not only to document, but also to shape memory and, in fact, make history. Here, the photographer recognized in that singular moment of horror and urgency that history was unfolding before him. He understood that he was witnessing, what he was witnessing was larger than the immediate event. And he recognized that this was not just simply an image of a child, but an image of an entire political system collapsing under the weight of its own violence. The political and emotional currency carried by a photograph is often what secures its iconic status. Indeed, C.S. Peirce, the founder of semiology, defines an icon as a sign that bears a resemblance to the reality it represents. In this sense, the Hector Peterson photograph functions as more than a documentary image, but as a visual sign of national trauma and a defining chapter in South Africa's history. So if we do nothing else on this day, we should reflect on our responsibilities as citizens of this country to bear witness to injustice and act, as Nzima did, as an artivist, that is to say, an artist whose work is a form of activism. As a photographer, Dr. Nzima occupied a deeply paradoxical position in society. Photographers are both present and they are absent. They are observers and participants, witnesses and archivists. They have the unique privilege to stand inside history as it unfolds, but they are also burdened by what they see and what they witness. For to witness suffering is in and of itself a form of suffering. Many lectures focused on Sam Nzima, the man, the father, the photographer, the journalist. I would like to suggest that we understand him as a witness. He was more than a photographer. He was a visual historian who became a witness to history in the making. Yet the privilege of witnessing is often accompanied by profound burden. Photographers who work in moments of conflict, injustice, and human suffering carry responsibilities that extend far beyond the technical act of making an image. In such moments, the photographer bears witness not only for himself in many respects, but for humanity. The most enduring photos are often those that remain with us long after we have encountered them. They become embedded in our collective psyche because they compel us to confront realities that we might otherwise prefer not to see. This burden of witnessing is perhaps nowhere more evident than in the work of South African photographic collectives such as Afropix, founded in 1982 for underground photographers, and the Bang Bang Club. Incidentally, the moniker Bang Bang was coined in 1990 and was a phrase used by conflict photographers to describe the sound of gunfire, which township residents also used when pointing out where the violence was happening. The next slide, please. But the burden of witnessing is evident in photojournalist Kevin Carter of the Bang Bang Club, whose haunting 1993 photograph of a starving Sudanese child observed by a nearby vulture became one of the defining images of a humanitarian crisis. The photograph immediately captured global attention, yet it also generated profound ethical questions that continue to be debated today. What is the responsibility of the photographer in the presence of suffering? Should the photographer remain an observer, committed to documenting evidence and events for the historical record? Or does the photographer have an obligation to intervene? At what point does witnessing become participation? These questions followed Kevin Carter long after the photograph was published. Public discussion focused not only on the image itself, but on the actions of the photographer. Audiences across the world wanted to know what happened to the child and whether the vulture was indeed chased away. So in many ways, the photograph became a site through which broader ethical questions and concerns about photojournalism, representation, and human responsibility were negotiated. For scholars of visual culture, the significance of the image lies not in what it depicts, but in the difficult questions it raises about the act of looking. It reminds us that iconic photography often emerges from circumstances of profound human anguish. The photographer does not simply record suffering from a distance. To witness such moments repeatedly, as you see in the set of photographs in front of us today, is in some measure to absorb the emotional weight, leading to the photographer not simply capturing suffering, but actually absorbing it. The story of Kevin Carter therefore reminds us that iconic photographs are not only historical documents. They are also records of encounters between the photographer and the subject, between witnessing and action, and between professional obligation and human empathy. These tensions remain central to our understanding of photography as both a documentary and an ethical practice. Carter's image went on to win a Pulitzer Prize in 1994, but soon thereafter, Carter ended his own life. And so when we ask what makes a photograph iconic and unforgettable, perhaps the answer lies here. An iconic photograph compresses an entire political struggle into one emotionally accessible human moment, condensing the tragedy of history into a single arresting image. It is what Donald Pierce describes as, and I quote, possessing the power of epic concentration, unquote. And for Sam Nzima's photo, we know that this photograph in front of us today is the most famous image of war in this country. But while we can view this image in isolation, it would contextualize iconic images when we look at other iconic war photographs that also profoundly altered global political consciousness. Can I have the next slide, please? A few years earlier, in 1968, the Saigon execution was taken by American photographer Eddie Adams, also incidentally with the Pentax camera, during the Vietnam War. This image captures the exact moment when Vietnamese General and National Police Chief Nguyen Loan executes Viet Cong prisoner Captain Lem on a public street in Saigon, in what is today known as Ho Chi Minh City. What makes this image so unforgettable is its immediacy. There is no preparation for the viewer. There is no emotional distance. There's no gradual narrative. The camera captures a once-in-a-lifetime moment of the precise instant between life and death. The gun is still raised, the tension still visible in the sinew of the general's straightened arm as he pulls the trigger, and time itself appears suspended. And much like Sam Nzima's photograph, the image condensed the brutality of an entire political conflict, and in this case, one that lasted 20 years, into one unforgettable visual moment. But like all wars, the Vietnam War was complex, ideological, geopolitical, and historically layered. But Eddie Adams reduced that complexity into a single, universally identifiable, understandable truth. Human violence captured in a shutter speed of 1/500th of a second. After he took this image and a few more, and the prisoner laying on the floor on the pavement, he dropped off the film at the Associated Press office and went for lunch, not realizing that he had just taken one of history's greatest photographs. Within 24 hours, the photograph was all over newspapers across the world, and he went on to win a Pulitzer Prize the following year in 1969. This image won over 500 awards, but most importantly, it influenced American public opinion regarding the US involvement in the Vietnam War. But at one of the many award ceremonies, Eddie Adams said, and I quote, "I was getting paid for showing one man killing another. 2 lives were destroyed that day, and I was the hero," unquote. And this is also what iconic photographs do. They strip away political abstraction and confront us with the consequence of human suffering. This is undeniable when we see Antoinette and Mboyise's expressions of suffering. It becomes a collective suffering. Now, if we are to compare this reality to Sam Nzima, the parallels are stark. 2 people died that day, Hector Peterson and Mboyisa Makubu, who disappeared never to be seen or heard of again in South Africa's historical lexicon. The strength of iconic photographs is then the ability to influence public understanding and contribute to collective memory and critically make history. In Saigon execution, 2 men died that day. General Loan, who pulled the trigger, whose reputation was destroyed and his life thereafter severely compromised, and Captain Lem. This observation is deeply important because it reminds us that iconic photographs possess extraordinary power, but also extraordinary responsibility. The role of the photographer, therefore, is never merely technical. It is profoundly ethical. Recently, I watched The Stringer, a documentary on Netflix that revisits one of the most influential photographs of the 20th century. The next slide, please. The image commonly known as Napalm Girl. Can we go to the next image? Thank you. Taken near Trang Bang in Vietnam in June 1972, just 4 years before the Soweto uprising. The photograph depicts a group of children with 9-year-old Pan Thi Kim Phuc in the middle, running naked along a road moments after a napalm attack. Her clothes had been burned away and her body severely burned and injured. It captures not simply a horror of war, but its impact on those most vulnerable. Again, within 24 hours, the photograph had been reproduced in newspapers across the world and seen by an estimated global audience of almost 1 billion. It transcended language, nationality, and political ideology. And for many people, it became the defining visual representation of the Vietnam War and remains one of the most recognizable photographs ever taken. The following year, the photographer received the Pulitzer Prize, and it is still regarded as one of the most significant war photographs of the modern era. What made the image so powerful was not simply its documentation of a military event. Rather, it transformed a distant geopolitical conflict into an immediate human tragedy. Through the suffering of a single child, viewers around the world were confronted with the devastating consequence of this war. Like Sam Nzima's photograph of Hector Peterson, Napalm Girl reminds us that iconic photographs do more than record history. They shape how history is understood, how it is remembered and felt, and more so when they capture young children. But there is an important comparison between Napalm Girl and Hector Peterson. Yes, both remember the war with one significant difference. Napalm Girl is an image of a war that has ended and served primarily as historical memory. Next slide, please. While by contrast, the Hector Peterson photograph functions simultaneously as memory and as warning. The image ensures that South Africans continue the debate on educational inequality, the debate on youth unemployment, and the debates on access, transformation, language, and social justice. Of course, 50 years later, the material conditions might be different, but the underlying questions that animated the uprising remain alive. Consequently, the photograph remains politically active and therefore is not merely a reminder of what happened back then in 1976, but is also a challenge about what is yet to be achieved in this country. So as a researcher and a student and an academic in visual culture, let me now turn to the Sam Nzima's image of 1976, a photograph that Time magazine recognizes as the 100 most influential images of all time. And allow me to discuss this image perhaps from a more analytical point of view. Firstly, it is a masterclass in visual storytelling. There is a powerful convergence of subject matter and composition. If we take a closer look at how the image is composed, next slide please, you will notice a strong diagonal in the body of Hector Peterson, who is the center of the composition. Your eye is immediately drawn to him, creating him as the focal point around which the entire image is organized. He is both the physical center and the emotional center of the frame, as everything radiates from his body. Next slide, please. Everything radiates from his body, and that is supported by the direction in which his face is moving or looking, and that is out of the screen. The photograph, next slide, is structured powerfully in a triangular composition, which is one of the most enduring compositional structures in Western art because it creates both balance and coherence. Movement is another critical element of this composition. Nzima captures motion beautifully. Mbuyise is running, Antoinette is running. The urgency of the movement creates a sense of momentum that propels the viewer forward with them. We are not observing an event from a distance, next slide. We are up close and drawn into it. The directionality of the image suggests a larger narrative unfolding outside the frame. Next slide. As we look at contrast, I just darkened and manipulated this a little bit, and balance, you will notice that the body of Hector Peterson is still, while the surrounding figures are in motion and full of expression. The juxtaposition between the stillness and emotionless Hector Peterson and the urgency of movement intensifies the emotional impact of the image. Another significant design element is gesture. One does not need to understand the political context of apartheid to recognize grief, fear, and anguish. But one of the crucial aspects of the image's power is what it excludes. The police or perpetrators are absent. The gun is absent. The act of violence itself is absent, but the consequences dominate the image. The tonal contrast you see here with the stark relationship with the light and dark and its dramatic shadows on the floor heightens the drama of the scene and directs attention towards the figures. It is purely theatrical. The photograph does not show apartheid. It shows the consequence of apartheid. This is ultimately what distinguishes this iconic photograph from being merely an important photograph. It is important to note that art historians have often compared Sam Nzima's composition, as Tulani has quite rightly observed, to the classical Renaissance depictions of the Pieta. Next slide, please. The Virgin Mary cradling the lifeless body of Jesus. The comparison is not intended as a theological one, but rather draws attention to the ways in which visual culture across centuries have represented grief, loss, human suffering through similar compositional devices. At the center of both works is the lifeless body of a young figure, and in both images, the viewer is invited not simply to observe the suffering, but to participate in the suffering. And the masterful composition transforms an individual tragedy into a universal human experience. What makes this comparison particularly striking is the radical different conditions under which these images were created. Michelangelo, who sculpted the Pieta, spent months refining the Pieta and taking approximately 2 years to complete it. Sam Nzima had seconds. Working amidst chaos, he instinctively framed grief, suffering, and urgency in a composition that echoed centuries of excellence in artistic representation. This reveals the extraordinary visual intelligence of this photographer. Perhaps this helps explain why the photograph has endured so powerfully within South African public culture. Like the Pieta, it has moved beyond its original context to become a cultural symbol. Next slide, please. 10 years ago, in 2016, in a discussion with Time magazine, Nzima acknowledged that he knew all his photographs were good. But after he famously hid the first roll in his sock, he did start a new roll of film, which caught the moments the students also captured and killed a policeman. When the police saw Nzima was still taking pictures, they forced the exposure of that film, thereby destroying the images of the policeman being killed by students. Nzima said he often thought about the two scenes he captured that day. One of a boy killed by police and another of students killing a policeman. Only one made it to the front pages. Had it been the other, one can only wonder where this country would be today. This is the power of that photograph. Nzima was a visionary, for had he not hid the roll of film, this country would be a very different place. Next slide, please. Though the photo's publication would eventually bring an end to apartheid, for Nzima, Sithole, and Makubu, the aftermath was horrifying. Nzima was harassed by police, lost his job, was under house arrest, and he never took a photo again. And in a later raid of the World newspaper offices, those negatives are surely destroyed. Now, as I move towards wrapping up, I want to go back to one of the demands of an iconic photo. Gressler suggests that in addition to international presence, it must establish Mengel, who specifically examines the numerous artistic adaptations of the Hector Peterson photograph, argues that the image has become an icon through its recurring visual presence. 50 years later, this image continues to circulate within South African public life, and in so doing has moved beyond journalism and entered the realm of cultural memory. The image has been adapted and reinterpreted by successive generations of artists seeking to engage with questions of memory, trauma, justice, and nationhood. Next slide. A few examples here include Frenchman Ernest Pion Ernest, whose charcoal drawings have been exhibited across the world with these specific images in Durban in the Warwick Triangle of 2002. Next one. And another, please. Another is Kevin Brand's installation on the castle in Cape Town. And Johannes Pokela, the next slide, ceramic memorial wall unveiled at the 30th anniversary of June 16. Next slide. This image of a three-dimensional rendition, unfortunately I couldn't identify the sculptor, has also contributed to the establishment and maintenance of this iconic image. These are just a few examples that illustrate how the photograph has acquired a second life and no longer belongs solely to the moment of June 16, 1976. As I conclude this morning, I would like to leave you with three reflections. The first concern I have is around agency. Next slide. Throughout this lecture, we have encountered individuals whose lives were forever altered by a single photograph. Agency is therefore an important consideration. Hector Peterson did not choose to become a global symbol of resistance, nor did his mother and sister choose to have the body of their beloved one on the front pages of newspapers across the world. Mboyise Mkubu did not choose to become one of the most recognizable figures in South African history, nor did Sam Nzima choose to have his life irrevocably transformed following the publication of this image. The photograph helped expose the brutality of apartheid to the world, but it also reminds us that history often extracts a deep personal cost from those who become its symbols. This raises an important question for our own time. What responsibility do we carry toward those whose lives become the subject of our daily lives, our narratives, and our collective memory? When we watch TV, reality TV, whether it is in the courts of South Africa or through Real Housewives or 90-Day Fiancés, how are our opinions shaping those we see? My second reflection concerns the enduring power of images. As a student of art history way back in the 90s, I encountered the debates initiated by L.B. Sachs in a paper he presented at an in-house ANC seminar on culture. It was titled Preparing Ourselves for Freedom, and it was published in the contentious text Spring is Rebellious, Arguments about Cultural Freedom by L.B. Sachs and Respondents. In this, he cautioned against the repetitive use of visual portrayals of icons that will reduce culture to a predictable visual vocabulary of suffering and struggle. He was warning against the misuse of imagery such as guns, clenched fists, and protest slogans, as they, he feared, will merely flatten meaning and impact. Needless to say, cultural workers at the time felt differently. However, later, scholars and art historians such as Colin Richards warned that powerful images can also be extraordinarily vulnerable, and their repeated exposure could diminish their power. While both Sachs and Richards feared the loss of power of the repeated and overexposed image, and this might be true of commonplace symbols like struggle icons of raised fists and AK-47s, Nzima's image has proved them wrong. It is precisely its repetitive use and overexposure that has cemented its place in the socio-cultural landscape of South Africa. Next slide. For 50 years, the image has been reproduced in textbooks, museums, memorials, exhibitions, documentaries, and public commemorations. Rather than diminishing its significance, this continual circulation has reinforced it. Next slide. The photograph has become part of South Africa's visual consciousness, and successive generations continue to encounter June 16 through Nzima's lens. My final reflection concerns the future. Sam Nzima's life, next slide, and suffering is ultimately a clarion call against complacency. The generation of 1976 challenged us to reconsider education, justice, and human dignity. 50 years later, universities remain uniquely positioned to advance those conversations. We now inhabit a world transformed by artificial intelligence, algorithmic media, digital manipulation, and unprecedented volumes of media production. The question facing us are therefore different, but no less urgent. How do we protect the integrity of visual truth in an age when seeing is no longer believing? With digital manipulation, rights of children and women are compromised. And this has led countries like Australia, Finland, China, Paris, France, and Portugal imposing restrictions on social media usage. How can we ensure that creatives are not silenced but supported? Today in South Africa, we as artists create and work in a dangerous age of artistic censorship. Further, brutal funding cuts for all artists create an unsustainable future for the arts in South Africa. How do we safeguard intellectual property of artists and cultural practitioners whose work continues to shape public understanding while they too, like Nzima, are standing inside history. And perhaps most importantly, what images are being created today that future generations will use to understand our own historical moment? Later, we will see one such image. These are not simply questions for photographers or artists alone. These are questions for universities and institutions of higher learning to grapple with. In fact, they are questions for government and for the public at large. We have a collective responsibility to the artists of the world. If one image could change the trajectory of this country, we must agree that without artists, our future is in jeopardy. Next slide. Thank you, and I wish you a blessed Youth Day 2026.
The Executive Dean at the Faculty of Art and Design. A rousing applause for her very seminal, quite vigorous speech there. Has hit on a number of issues, very, very powerful points that she has brought to the table. Issues around what this image tells us about how it can be exploited for the future. In fact, she has made a very strong point in saying this should be remembered within the context of history. Funny enough, we now begin to talk of the picture that was taken back then in 1976, pretty much at the center, if you like, of our discussion in the country, of our discussion around freedom, around liberation, around the struggle. And she has put it in words of one syllable in terms of what history can do to inform the future. And I can tell by the reaction from the crowd, even students had to stand up with a resounding applause, just crediting the amount of energy, the incisiveness of the speech as well that came to the fore. And one of the issues that I found quite interesting for me was of course the fact that she has mentioned the fact that Sam Nzima was incarcerated. All this with the view to try and silence him. She has spoken about the meteoric rise of the image over and above the person who took the picture herself. So that has been quite a seminal speech indeed. I'd like to have Professor Nalini Moodley on the touchline here just to understand some of the key factors that she has raised here. And of course, we're going to hear some reflection on the keynote address. Hein Groove, who's the acting head of department at the Visual Communication Faculty of Arts and Design, is going to be giving us his reflection on the keynote address. So we're going to be looking at some of the guests as well to join us on the touchline. I really am hoping that Mr. Nzima, the Tshwane Nzima, will join us. I'm really hoping that Professor Moodley will also be able to join us here, just to unpack what they have already said. Let's go back to the podium. I see in a moment we're going to be hearing from Hein Groove to give us the reflection of what has been a very impactful speech. And talking Hein Groove, he is now going into the podium to try and give us the reflection on the keynote address. Let's go back now live, of course, in a moment to hear what he has to say. But obviously, as I said, a lot has been unpacked. And obviously, this was going to require some people with some incisive knowledge in the space of arts and visuals to come and really explain to us what a picture like that would mean. Without much further ado, though, let's go back to the podium. I see Hein Groove is already ready, straining at the least, chomping at the bit, will give us the reflection on the keynote address. Let's go back live.
This afternoon, and I decided to frame this reflection around moving beyond the lens. But before I begin, I would like you guys to take out your phones. And I realize this goes against most functions as etiquette, but just bear with me for a second. I would like you to go to your phone's photo gallery and scroll through the photographs that you've recently taken. I would like you to find one photograph that you would be disappointed to lose. Not necessarily the best photograph, not the most technically accomplished photograph, but a photograph that matters to you. Now, once you've found it, and I would quote the influences, double tap to lock it in. And I would like you to ask yourself the following questions. Why this photograph? What made you keep that photograph? What memory does it trigger? What story does it help you remember? Prof. Nalini reminded us this morning that photographs help us remember. They help us gather fragments of experiences and reconnect with moments that might otherwise be forgotten. We live in an age where billions of photographs are created every single day. Most will be viewed briefly and then forgotten. Many will never be seen again. Yet some photographs move beyond private memory and become part of collective memory. Consider 3 photographs from the history of photography. The first is the Boulevard du Temple, created by Louis Daguerre in the 1830s, and it is remembered as one of the photographs, the earliest photographs that included a human figure. The second photograph is a photograph done by Stephen McCurry, and some of you might remember that, of the Afghan girl that was published on the cover of the National Geographic magazine in 1985. And through that single portrait, it became a global symbol of displacement, identity, and resilience. The third is Dr. Sam Nzima's photograph of Hector Peterson, a photograph that transformed the moment in Soweto into one of the most recognizable visual symbols of South Africa's struggle against apartheid. Different photographers, different contexts, and different centuries, yet all 3 photographs continue to speak to us today. Photographers often speak of the decisive moment, a concept associated with Henri Cartier-Bresson. The decisive moment reminds us that timing, observation, and the ability to recognize significance are important aspects of photography. However, the enduring photographs of history remind us that timing alone is not enough. Many photographers capture decisive moments. Very few create photographs that endure. The difference often lies beyond the lens. The shutter closes in a fraction of a second, but the meaning of a photograph continues to develop long afterwards. Some photographs become part of personal memory, others become part of collective memory. They move beyond documentation and become part of how we understand the world. To understand why some photographs endure, we therefore need to move beyond the lens. And Prof. Nalini's keynote offers us several possible answers that I would like to reflect on this afternoon. The first one is that the photograph of Dr. Sam Nzima transformed an event into a human story. A key reason for Dr. Sam Nzima's photograph to be an enduring photograph is that it transformed a political event into a human story. The photograph presents us not with statistics, policies, or a political argument, but with people. It presents grief, urgency, vulnerability, and humanity. Throughout her keynote, Prof. Nalini reminded us that photographs help us remember. They help us reconnect with moments that might otherwise become distant abstractions. The Soweto uprising was a complex historical event involving politics, education, language, and resistance. Yet through this photograph, history became personal. Rather than remembering an uprising, we encounter the dying Hector Peterson, the figures running, carrying him through the streets of Soweto. People often connect more deeply with individual stories than with abstract narratives. The photograph reminds us that enduring images often begin when history becomes personal. The second reflection, it condensed a complex reality into a single frame. One of the most compelling observations from Prof. Nalini's keynote was that iconic photographs compress an entire political crisis into one emotionally accessible human moment. The Hector Peterson photograph does exactly that. Within a single frame, we encounter youth, education, resistance, violence, loss, and social change. The photograph does not attempt to explain apartheid, it does something far more powerful. It shows us the consequences of apartheid. Prof. Nalini highlighted how the images excludes the perpetrators, the weapons, and even the act of violence itself, but what remains are the human consciousness, human consequences. This is perhaps why the photograph continues to resonate across generations. Complex historical realities are distilled into a visual moment that remains understandable 50 years later. Many photographs document events. Enduring photographs help us understand them. The third point is that the image continues to generate meaning. 50 years later, scholars, educators, museums, commemorations, and public conversations continue to return to this photograph. Its significance did not end when it was published. One of the strongest arguments in the keynote was that the photograph has acquired a second life. It has moved beyond journalism and entered the realm of cultural memory. Through artworks, memorials, exhibitions, and commemorations, each generation encounters the image anew and invests it with fresh meaning. The photograph no longer belongs solely to the events of 16 June 1976. It now belongs to the South Africa's collective memory. That is why it continues to generate discussions around education, justice, language, transformation, and youth agency. Enduring photographs are never fixed. They continue to produce meaning long after creation. The second last reflection point is that enduring images demand ethical reflection. The photographs record a moment of profound suffering. Yet it is precisely through the circulation of the image that many people came to understand the realities of apartheid and the events of 16 June 1976. This creates an important ethical tension. How do we preserve memory while remaining sensitive to trauma? How do we document suffering without exploiting it? Prof. Nalini suggests that we understand Sam Nzima not only as a photographer, but also as a witness, and this distinction is important. Witnessing carries responsibility. It requires us to confront realities that we might otherwise prefer not to see. The photographer is no longer merely recording an event. The photographer becomes part of how that event is remembered. Many iconic photographs endure because they force us to continue asking the difficult questions. The last reflection point I would like to make is that the lessons for the contemporary image maker is important. A phrase that stayed with me from the keynote was that iconic photographs do not create themselves. Behind them stands an individual whose judgment, instinct, and courage transforms a fleeting moment into a permanent historical record. Dr. Sam Nzima was not merely a photographer. He was recognizing significance in real time. He was making decisions under extraordinary circumstances. He was bearing witness to history as it unfolded. Today, more images are produced in a single day than any previous generation could have imagined. Most disappear almost immediately. Yet the challenge remains the same: to recognize significance, to bear witness, to create with intent, and to understand that the images we create today may one day become part of how future generations understand the present. Perhaps the enduring relevance of this photograph of Dr. Sam Nzima reminds us that the photographers do more than record moments. They contribute to how societies remember moments. So in conclusion, as I reflect on Prof. Nalini's keynote this afternoon, I'm reminded that the enduring relevance of Sam Nzima's photograph lies not in the moment the shutter was pressed, but in the meaning that generations have continued to move beyond the lens. The photograph's power extends far beyond the events of 16 June 1976. It continues to shape conversations about memory, justice, education, and responsibility. None of the photographers behind the Boulevard du Temple, the Afghan girl that I mentioned earlier, or the photograph of Hector Peterson we see here, could have known that their images would become enduring photographs. But they began with intent. They began with a desire to record, to document, communicate, or to bear witness. What transformed those photographs into enduring images was the willingness of generations of viewers to move beyond the lens and engage with the stories they tell. Earlier, I asked you to identify one photograph on your phone that mattered to you. A photograph that you would be disappointed to lose. I would now like to ask you to reflect on the following. If someone encountered that photograph 50 years from now, what story would that photograph tell? Would it simply record a moment? Or would it reveal something meaningful about who we were, what we valued, and how we understood the world around us at this moment? Perhaps that is the endearing lesson of Dr. Sam Nzima's photographs. Photographs become endearing not because they survive the passage of time, they endure because they continue to matter. As photographers, educators, researchers, and viewers, our responsibility is therefore not simply to make photographs, it is to create, share, and engage with images intentionally, to move beyond the lens, to move beyond what is immediately visible, to ask deeper questions, to seek deeper understanding, and to recognize that every time we press the shutter, we are not recording a moment. We are deciding how that moment may one day be remembered. And perhaps that is why Dr. Sam Nzima's photograph remains so powerful 50 years later. It allows us to remember, to reconnect with a moment that shaped a nation, to remember those who stood inside history, and to recognize our own responsibility as photographers and as citizens to bear witness to the world around us. Thank you, Prof. Nalini, for reminding us that photography is never only about what we see through the lens, but also about what we remember long after the shutter has closed. Thank you.
Questions challenging the country to start reflecting more deeply on the history of South Africa and challenging South Africa to begin to think of a country that is moving forward through these particular conversations, and how this day then become the focal point in ensuring that we understand the history we are talking about, and that this history is not distorted. And talking about distortion, I was talking about the importance of a day, especially in correcting the wrongs, especially in doing away with the perennial distortion of truth that we have heard. The numbers. Is far more monumental than originally declared. It's now sitting at between 500 as well as 700, those being some of the discussions that came to the fore there. All right, now we go back to the podium in a moment, and I'm not sure really if we're going to be hearing from Mr. Sam Nzima's family. Mr. Jabu Nzima is expected to pay the family tribute there, but we'll also have the Mbombela choir that's going to come up in a moment, and then we can build towards conversations that I'm expecting to have here. Mr. Charles Makubu is also going.
Sanbonan. Niyaphila. Njengoba bashilo igama lami ngingitshenifa. Ngamabuza sibonga. Ngitela park to hlakathe maqiniso, ngitela park to khipha ingonyuluka. June 16, 1976. History calls it riot. But Dr. Sam said, look, ngitela park to hlakathe maqiniso, ngitela park to khipha ingonyuluka. 16 June 1976. They called it riot. But Dr. Sam's picture said, wait, just take a closer look. This is a child. This is pain. This is a nation crying out for freedom. Kwavakala umsindo weqhuma kwesibhamu walandzelwa ngilesikhulu usililo negetsetela komatinyo kwakopota ingadi kwaphuma umphefemulo batali balahlekelwa bantwana 16 June 1976. Dr. Sam was not a soldier. He was just a man who had no God, no shame. Yet he went with his just only his lands, he continued. Just a picture. He took a photo. It is not just a picture, but a reminder that our future was not of ignorance. Let's don't miss this book. Because they might cover the food, but it's already on the finish of Talanja. Dr. Sam Nzima said, your legs became the voice of the voiceless, your courage became a photo that we can ever remind the truth.
This is an indication of the kind of talent of this university. The country is blessed. I would like to now invite James Manene to come and make an announcement.
In essence, challenging the country, and I think that is an important moment because her argument is that when the entire nation thought of a military approach, when everybody was picking up a gun and readying themselves for war, when everybody was fighting apartheid on all fronts and all angles, it is the perspicacity and the sagacity of Dr. Sam Nzima that taught him to take the camera and trust the lens. And that could have been possibly the best decision he took, because from there, apartheid was exposed. From that picture, memories are had, lessons are being taught, and that is how seminal this moment is. Of course, sometimes during the proceedings, we'll hear from Mr. Charles Makubu as we humanize Mbuyisa Makubu, the man carrying Hector Peterson on the 16th of June, 1976. So we are building slowly but surely towards that moment as the program wears on, and we are right at the tail end, if you like, of the program. We have a few items that are still left, and then we can look ahead to some of the important conversations. We have Dr. Emily Mabote, who's the acting Deputy Vice Chancellor in the digital transformation space, who's going to hopefully climb onto the podium and address the people. We'll make some announcement as well of the student photo competition winner. So that is still coming up in a moment. At the moment, though, we have the choir, the Mbombela campus choir, that is readying themselves to belt out a song, and then we'll hear from the Nzima family tribute. Mr. Jabu Nzima is going to be joining us. As we bring you proceedings live from the Mbombela campus, is the 6th Dr. Sam Nzima Memorial Lecture, bringing you blow-by-blow report, account after account of what is happening, and even borrowing from some of the seasoned historians who have followed the story, who are not taking articles and pieces, who really have followed the story, have done some in-depth research as well to bless us with some knowledge here. We'll go to the podium, the campus choir is obviously there to give us the melodies. But as I said, Lukolo Robushe is the Mbombela campus choir leader, who will give us the vote of thanks and announcement as well at a later stage. Let's go back now to the podium. I see the choir has already started belting out the song.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sterling performance. Now it's an opportunity for the humble family, Nzima family from Lilydale, very humble village, whose humility was disrupted by the enduring relevance of that picture that threw the family into the limelight. It's an opportunity now to receive a tribute from a family representative. Jabu Nzima, it's your turn.
Don't be surprised if I bring along a notebook. I don't trust in IT a lot. One time I prepared a very good speech in my tablet. Then when I arrived to the podium, I mistakenly pressed delete. Then the whole speech was gone. So, all protocol observed and established, and I may not be as accurate as the doctor. Professor Tshwane University and other academics, I agree with Tulani that if this was a graduation ceremony, I'm sure we'll be looking at different academic regalias. So we talk of really academics, you are recognized. The campus rector, the doctor. I agree with you, Prof, when you say this institution is one of the best in terms of transformation. Among other things that you must check should be to check as to say how many institutions are run by women. And let's applaud this institution for that. Sam Nzima Foundation Chairperson, Mr. Tshwane Nzima, the first citizen of Bushbuck Ridge Local Municipality, Councillor Lydia Murwane and Zita, and their spouse. Obviously, behind a successful woman, there's a man. That's the opposite of what you used to do. Yeah. Adapt IT Director, Lukolo, Sam Nzima Foundation board members and their families. Why specifically I mentioned the families? You need permission from the highest office in the family, which is your family, to participate here, and we recognize them dearly. Keynote speaker, Professor Nalini Moodley. Mbowane family, I must indicate how important Mbowane family is here. For some reasons, my father, who was older than Sam, and Sam all married the Mbowenis. And we are what we are today because of the Mboweni family. Although there was an event that the issue that we wanted to take to Matlanga Commission, because our mothers passed on at very early ages. But that is for another day. But they looked after us so well, thus we are here today. Another most important family is the Makubele family. Eric is here today. When Sam arrived in Joburg, one of the families that he interacted with were the Makubele families. So they are here today, we recognize them. The families of June 16, 1976 victims, you know, at times when you look at the pictures, it is always painful to note that in the picture that you see here, only Dorothy is still alive. The person carrying dying Hector, Muisa Nomo, the leader in the Soweto uprisings, Tsetse Mashinini Nomo, and of course the most important one, the man behind the lens, also no more. So every time we look at the pictures, those families, as the family lives on and on those memories. To the Nzima family, every person who takes a stage will always take pride. I have pride that my son is here today, Thabo, and he's here in order of the appearances. He was the first to appear, so I'm happy for that. Our siblings are here. Our parents are here. Let me also recognize Batukulwa from different families, in particular Nkomas. If you could take a bar, just rise up so that they see you. They think as now, Batukulu. There they are. Let me also recognize Chris Harrison. I don't know where you're seated. Yeah, Chris is a former PSL referee. He got injured and now is the deputy principal of Penryn College. He invited me to say I should come and speak there. I told him, hey, the best, come to our family and see. So he's with us today here, and we appreciate that. Our dynamic program director, I recognize you, and thank you very much for doing such a wonderful job. It's not easy to usher some of the dignitaries that we have here today. I'm telling you, it's not easy, but you live to the occasion. And most important, all those, the TUT community, it is our family. We recognize you starting from the management down to whatever level, the choir and everything. Let's give them a round of applause. And our VIPs, those that I forgot to recognize, thank you very much for being here. Oh, good afternoon. As a family rep, I must recognize or respond to the following questions. How was Sam as a family man? 2, how proud are we as a family? 3, how was life after June 16, 1976 to the family? 4, how do we feel now that the work of Sam is recognized, acknowledged, and celebrated? You would remember in one of those talks, Sam had always indicated that he would be a happy man should he die while the whole world knows who really took the picture, despite the attempts to sabotage everything. And lastly, what do we do about all the people who sacrifice their time and resources to support us without ROI, return on investment? You know, nowadays, any person who puts something is looking for a return on investment. So the support that we are getting, none of you are looking for that. Now, to call, I want to apologize up front, as my speech might appear to be vote of thanks, but that would not be. I'll just be touching on that. Just take your mind back and imagine you were in Soweto today, being 16 June 1976, not 2026. You imagine yourself as a parent, your child having gone to school, and you receive news that peaceful protesting students were fatally shot at. Your next question would be, is my child safe? Imagine as students being part of the march and the unexpected happening. The unexpected, I'm referring to when you were shot at while you were protesting peacefully. You also imagine as a staff member of, or a staff team of the World newspaper, having been instructed to cover a peaceful march that turned so brutal and fatal. And lastly, outside of the house, you imagine as apartheid regime, ready to crush any protest, no matter how peaceful it would be, with students that are unarmed. I always say this, but I've never said it to the right person, to Tulani. Tulani is a very lucky person. He's like one pastor in our area who was to travel to Nigeria for the church. Unfortunately, he fell sick 14 days before. He was admitted in hospital. He recovered quickly. Coming out of the hospital, those that come from Bushbuckridge will know this. Coming out of hospital, when he was to join, he was told, you cannot go to that church if you have been hospitalized the past 14 days. So he remained behind, and the rest is history. The church collapsed. He could have been there. For some reasons, Thulani's transfer to Ngungunyane High School had to be postponed for reasons not known. He would have been attending school in Soweto. Maybe he could have been part of the march. Even beyond that, as a brave man, he would not have allowed his father to be harassed. Part of why he could not allow, while his father would be hiding, or our father, he would come out and say, Nifunan, and maybe it would be history today. Hence I say it's lucky. The last part, once more, Thulani was the last person to speak to our dad in his sickbed. Having traveled from Joburg, he was the last while we were here. Can you imagine when a person coming all the way from Joburg and have that honor of being the last while we are around? We're still preparing to go there, but he went there and then the rest is history. Sam, the fifth and last born of Kishini and Vuyazi, was born like the other four children, and for some reasons, known to his parents only, he was given the name of Masana. Masana translates to the warmth brought by sun in a cold day. And when that happens, we all look for the direction of the sun. And what followed then would tell you that the parents had seen something in him. As a family, we are proud to have had a good father like Sam. We had so many good moments with him. Sam was a loving person. You know, I can spend the whole day talking about the love that he had to his siblings. His father, the one that he comes after, normally they say, "Man landelana, you don't love each other." But with him, my father was a builder. He built his bottle store for the brother. Upon completion, the brother applied the other business for my father. And my father was driving a very old Custom 10. He gave him a Land Rover Discovery as a sign of love. He loved his two sisters, one of which worked in his business. Beyond that, even the children of his sisters were also working in his own business. That showed real love. He loved us as his children and extended. In our culture, we don't have this say to say, this is uncle, whatever. Boba bebong. Now, he would invite us to Joburg during holidays. I always remember this, my first trip to Johannesburg. As we were traveling, those that come from Bushbuckridge, you know Alexander. We had a breakdown there. Thulani was among the passengers. Instead of lamenting with us, he was saying, yeah, that's why this breakdown. Sam loved his in-laws. That's why Bomalume, Maggie was shown, I think, around 62, 63, I'm not sure of that. But the bond is only getting stronger. Only that Mam Sylvia declined the offer to become the next mother, which was unfortunate, but we are here today because of that. Sam loved the community of Lilydale. If Sam was still around, this thing of Koshama foreigners was going to be painful to him, because when the people from Mozambique came here, he had prepared a place where they settled. Even today, that area is still there. And he had also love for the fancy cars. In our area, I was among the first to drive Mercedes-Benz. White Mercedes-Benz, I can't remember, it was E230. Was it 230? Yeah, somewhere there. Yeah, 280, E280. And he would not drive for a long distance, particularly when we were around. But he had always this thing. Every time we had to go to Joburg, He would start the car, drive 500 meters, and then he would be tired. Come and drive. Now, there was one popular question. Okay, why drive Mercedes? Every time we go. But he had that love and would drive and you would not even reach Shawela. Tulani knows. Once you pass Boxback, he sees those lights, would travel in the evening, would wake up, hey, again. Then he would get in there. That was Uncle Sam. He loved his job and he was brave, very brave. Hence we are here today. If he did not love his job, this history would not be known. For that reason, as a family, we are always open to any innovation or suggestion that will keep the legacy of Sam to live on. May the spirit of Sam continue to live on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Javo, for that delivery. I know you are singling out Tulani as being the lucky one. But I think the people of South Africa are luckier.
Around illegal immigration, he's arguing that Sam would have frowned upon that particular idea because he prepared for Mozambicans a space where they will live, which suggests his warm humanity as well. But we have to go back to the stage now. We'll have the announcement of the student photo competition winner, Dr. Emily Mabote, who's the acting deputy vice chancellor in the digital transformation space, is going to make that proud announcement. That's coming in a moment as we bring you proceedings live from the Tshwane University of Technology Mbombela campus out in the Mpumalanga province. And of course, it's the 6th Dr. Sam Nzima Memorial Lecture. Without much further ado, though, let's climb back to the stage. Dr. Emily Mabote, the acting deputy vice chancellor in the digital transformation space, talking to us there.
Good afternoon, everyone. Are you still afternoon, Prof? Yeah, thank you. Recognizing all protocols here this afternoon, starting with our Vice Chancellor, the Chairperson of the board, and the other board members who are here, the members of the executive, our executive mayor who's here, all protocols observed to be safe. My role here is quite an interesting one and an easy one to announce the winner of the student photo competition. But before I start with the announcement, I think there's going to be a video that is going to show the winning photographer and some voiceover as well. So let's do that first and then I will do the announcement. Thank you. Regina, are we going to, okay? Okay, thank you. Last year, Corporate Affairs and Marketing launched the very first TUT student photo competition. And the aim of this competition is to invite our students to celebrate Youth Month, as well as to honor and draw inspiration from Dr. Sam Nzima through the art of photography. This year, as we commemorate half a century since the Soweto uprising, another call was issued to all our students, inviting them to submit 3 photographs capturing the spirit of youth. A snapshot to preserve the magic of today's youth for generations to come. Students who participated in the competition were also requested to submit a short narrative along with their entries to the adjudication panel. Today, it is my honor to announce the winner of the 2026 TUT Student Photo Competition. And this year's winner is someone who sees the spirit of South Africa's youth as hope, strength, and Ubuntu. And the winner of the photo that we saw there is none other than Sipokazi Marivate. And ladies and gentlemen, she's a first-year student who is enrolled for a diploma in commercial photography at the Faculty of Arts and Design at Tshwane University of Technology. Let's congratulate her. With a VC. Prof. Over to you, Sipokazi. Yeah. There's a voice over. Regina? Are you going to play the voice over? Just a few words. Just a few words, yeah.
Hi, guys. My name is Sipokazi Marivate, and I reside in Nuso Shanguve, Block G. I am deeply honored to be standing here, especially that I am a first-year student, knowing that I won and chairs the arts department. To be honest, I never imagined that I'll be standing here in front of you all. But I am here and I am grateful. Winning this competition means a lot to me, especially on a significant day as June 16. As someone still finding their way in the industry, days like this remind me of why I have chosen photography in the first place. I capture moments, I tell stories, and I show the world through my own eyes. My trip here was made possible through the generous sponsorship of Dr. Sam Nzima's foundation and the arts department. And I want to deeply thank them for believing in a student like me and for investing in young people's future. I'd also like to give thanks to Regina and her team, who did absolutely everything to organize my journey to make sure that I could be here celebrating the gala and also this special day. You see, this photo here reminds us that we are not alone and that Ubuntu shows that we could move forward together, no matter what race and no matter what age. As long as we love each other and we uplift, then the future of our kids will be a very beautiful future in South Africa. Thank you so much, and I will cherish this day.
Humbled winner of the student photo competition out of Soshanguve, of course, walking away in a tight competition. Really, all these photos looked like winners, but she aced it, taking it home, and a whopping 5,000 rand. Has been quite appreciative of the role that the Tshwane University of Technology has played, especially being a first student, has put this down to commitment, has put this down to Ubuntu, and has all again gone on record as saying this is more than just a picture. Should understand this picture taken and the competition obviously running during the Dr. Sam Nzima memorial lecture kind of dovetails with the spirit of the day to show the power of the picture and its storytelling ability. We've got to go now back to the podium where we'll take the vote of thanks in a moment. Mr. Luxolo Robushe will be doing the honors to thank those who have been here as we bring you the 6th Dr. Sam Nzima Memorial Lecture live from the Mbombela campus out in the Mpumalanga province. And the program will be coming to an end in a moment. But like I said, we are looking forward to hearing Mr. Luxolo Robushe, who will, of course, be giving the vote of thanks and announcement. Let's go back now live to the podium.
The Vice Chancellor. Let me give recognition to the Vice Chancellor, Prof. Maluleke, the senior leadership of TUT, the first citizen that is here with us from Bushbuck Ridge, the Marwanes. Without taking too much of your time, because I'm here to wrap up, I was initially wondering why it is so important to have a vote of thanks. And as I reflected, it occurred to me that more often than not, I come from a certain rural village next to East London in the Eastern Cape. Most people want to say, I was there. They sacrifice their time, they show commitment, because they don't want to hear from a second or third person. They want to say, when this event took place, I was there. And I think many of us are privileged today because we can attest to the fact that when this 50th was being done, we were there. When Prof. Nalini Moodley was addressing us, we were there physically. And there is no greater sense of respect and acknowledgement for individuals than to simply say thank you. And I'm standing here on behalf of the members of the foundation in my role to say to all of you, thank you so much for having taken the time to sacrifice other areas that you could have been in to be here with us this afternoon. I've never shared this with you, Mr. Nzima, Tshwane Nzima that is, but as I was listening to the rector yesterday, Dr. Tempia, it occurred to me that the day I actually heard about the story of Sam Nzima properly was in 1986. And ironically, it was through a white young boy from Swaziland who narrated the story very deeply. And I remember being shocked as well as being angry that the story of Sam Nzima was not being shared with us in our country back in those days. It is also in that spirit that, having listened to you, Spogazi, and many other young people that are here, I think you are truly privileged to be able to stand here and hear firsthand the story of Sam Nzima and what that iconic picture meant for the struggle for liberation in South Africa. The other thing that occurred to me as I was reflecting yesterday on the speech that was being made by Prof. Maluleke is, why do those that struggle have such a strong conviction to continue to focus on that struggle, notwithstanding what the consequences would be? And it occurred to me that it is pictures like the one that we're looking at that give people the strength that the cause for freedom, the cause for justice, was a noble one and in fact is worth the sacrifice. There's a story of an MK cadre who was arrested by the security branch in Port Elizabeth. And he told members of the security branch, he said, "I know you are going to kill me. That fate I have accepted. I must also tell you one thing, that having killed me, there'll be many more that follow behind me, because the cause that we stand for is a just one, and the cause for freedom, it is unstoppable." It is the kind of images that we look at, such as that one, that capture and commit and recommit many of us to follow in the struggles to fight for justice in our own respective spaces. I'm truly privileged from an Adapt IT point of view to be standing here. One, because we've got a relationship with the Sam Nzima Foundation, but also, over and above that, we have got a long-standing relationship with TUT. And it is such a wonderful coincidence that there's a convergence of the mandate of the Sam Nzima Foundation and that of TUT, supported by us, that looks at the work that must be done to mold the minds of young people. And for me, in terms of my generation, that would have missed on some of this history, would have participated in some shape or form in the struggles of the 80s. It is wonderful to be able to stand here and watch what that legacy is in terms of it being imparted on the young people of our country. Rector, I'm being asked to finish what you started. So thank you so much for having welcomed us here. I understand that you started in February. Prof was very clear that you've passed the test on the 90 days. He seemed happy on that, so congratulations to you, and thank you for the role that you have played. Prof. Maluleke, we were here 2 years ago. I got to respect the power of research in academia when you articulated in second person the story of Sam Nzima. A spellbinding address that we listened to in the other venue. It occurs to me as I listened to you yesterday that you have the ability to hoist the mirror in front of all of us that listen to you with patience. And that mirror allows us to reflect, make us believe in something greater, and identify our role and contribution in such. We thank you for your continued participation and support of June 16 and the Sam Nzima Foundation. Thank you very much. Tulani, who is not only the chair, but someone I've known for many years, having listened to the address by Prof. Moodley, something in me said, whatever you may have wished for over the past couple of years, we've been involved with this event for the past 5 years, give or take, that perhaps this is the crowning glory, this 50th anniversary, to have to listen to that very, very powerful address by Professor Nalini Moodley. I will abuse this moment and please ask her to stand once again as a keynote address, and we just give her another big round of applause for what I thought was an outstanding address. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was just amazing, ma'am. Truly, truly amazing. I listened very intently. I was making copious notes. I will simply take the last parts of your reflections, which spoke to agency, how those that are affected by the work that happens as far as photography is concerned, there are these lasting impacts and effects on them for their involvement. You spoke of the power of photography and you referenced Albie Sachs. And last, you spoke on the future focus. But one of my key takeaways from your address was remembering. And I kept on reflecting on that theme of remembering, that 50 years down the road now, we have to reimagine our country, relook the role that we need to play in our various spheres, and in essence, reconfigure and reconstruct our country in an image that we would all wish for on our own side. I think for me, Dr. Botes, what stood out for me was firstly the attire. I thought it was cool when you walked here on this side, but you did much of the work in terms of reflecting on the work of Dr. Moodley. So thank you so much for that. I think I move on to Hein. Wonderful as well, sir, for your reflections. Much appreciated. Prajabu, you did do much of my work, so I'm not going to repeat that as well. Lastly, colleagues, I think I must acknowledge the rest of the Sam Nzima family, the Mazibugos, the Kondlos, the Mwelases, as acknowledged, the Mboweni family as well. Dr. Mabote, thank you for that announcement. Last but not least, I would say our program director, the ever versatile program director. I've seen him play a number of different roles, and he seems to do this one also very, very well. So thank you to you. A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
The Mbombela campus is the 6th Dr. Sam Nzima Memorial Lecture coming to you live from our Mbombela campus in the Mpumalanga province. And that's Mr. Luxolo Hubushe wrapping up matters. The last item left here would obviously be the chorus that is going to belt the song in a moment. And I'm expecting to now begin with the conversations around people who have said great things, done great things. And I'm sitting here with one of the winners of a competition. I'm sure you would have heard Dr. Emily Mabote making an announcement here of the students' photo competition winner. She tried to run away. We were able to catch her. But what a moment, because I was able to see those photos and see Pogazi. What a moment. She's with us here in a moment. We're going to be starting that particular conversation. But again, what a heartwarming speech she gave us. On a day like this, the 16th of June, that is, to win a prize like this makes it far more monumental than originally it would be if it was given on any other day, on any other different day. So Sipokas is joining us here on the touchline for this particular conversation. Really a proud moment for the first-year student, I must say, and maybe it's important to start getting into her thought. You tried running away. Sipokazi, once again, congratulations on that major feat. How do you feel?
I feel amazing. I'm able to show the picture that I captured in this very situation.
Yeah. In taking that particular picture, firstly, before we get to that picture specifically, let's talk about your expectations here. 4 beautiful pictures were shown there. Appears to me this was a tight competition. Did you expect this?
I honestly did not, because I know one of my student classmates was entered to just win this for one. So I just took that
Did you have to find a particular space, maybe a particular angle even, to take that photo? Or was it just another photo?
No, it was
As a first-year student, what does this powerful stat say about where you are likely to go in the future?
I'm not sure that I'm okay.
For you, as a young photographer with a bright future, I must add, how much do you understand, having heard what you heard of Dr. Sam Nzima and the space you are in? Because you seem to be falling well into his line of work. What does his body of work say to you as a prospective photographer?
So I'm not gonna lie, I think this was all aligned because just the other day I was assignment for Dr. Peterson Mbombela.
Yes.
And then now to enter this competition, I didn't expect it to be this big.
Yeah.
But it's such a powerful remembrance of how important Dr. Sam Nzima was for South Africa, and how he was able to document through his eyes, to tell. It was sort of like a journal for the rest of the world to say, this is what was happening in South Africa.
Sure.
And because this happened, now we are able to move into more positive in South Africa.
What are you going to do with the money? It sounds like you can buy a house in France. That's a lot of money. What are you going to do? What do you plan to do?
No, I'm going to invest in my cash in order to buy equipment, camera gear, and buy champagne. Thank you so much, sir.
gives up pretending. The last defense dissolves into the grooves goes unending. 4 in the morning is a place, not just a time. A territory where the usual rules don't apply. The version of yourself that needs the daylight to exist has quietly stepped aside. What remains at 4 in the morning is older than your name. The part that was here before the story, the part that always came. I have been afraid of this hour, the way you fear the thing that knows you best. But the groove was always waiting at 4 a.m. to give the oldest part of me its rest. Not the sleep that comes from being tired, but the rest that comes from being true. 4 in the morning.
On a legacy, a very, very tight legacy. How do you sum up the developments here? Some of the speeches, very, very powerful speech from Professor Nalini Moodley. All the events, all things considered, how do you sum up what was spoken here today?
Yeah, thank you very much. If looking dapper and dressing well was academic, I would be a professor.
Very short.
Yeah. No, this was one of the most powerful speeches after Professor Maluleke's speech 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I like the fact that this was very detailed, analytical, and pointing to things that we've always taken for granted.
Yeah.
The topic suited Professor Nalini Moodley. She went into the detail of what it means to be an enduring kind of photograph, iconic in its nature,
yeah.
And comparing it with some of the historical pictures. Not here in South Africa, but this picture of the Peace indeed has had the kind of impact that it is iconic in its nature. We should be very proud of that as a country. We should be very proud of the fact that 50 years later, and even going forward, this picture remains very relevant, in spite of the fact that it has been duplicated several times. It makes that point that it remains relevant.
So, a lot has been said about the picture, the meteoric rise of the picture in Professor Nalini Moodley's words, as opposed to the man who took the picture. Why do you think such a balance is there for story?
Yeah, I think she put it very nicely. The picture depicts agony, depicts death, but it removes the perpetuator from the picture. If you look at the agony in the faces of her if you look at the sequences as well, we did actions of to pick up an injured activities. For that, you look at Tshwane. She was very guilty that they have owned whether she had anything was in this kind of situation. And Sam Nzima's capturing of this picture, whether consciously at the time or subconsciously, he was capturing an important historic moment that will change the trajectory
of our struggle. And I really want to hope that you will continue talking about the legacy of the Dr. Sam Nzima Legacy Center. That's one of the things that I found quite invigorating to hear, because once again, there's a bigger question around whether his legacy is being respected enough. I'd really like to have this conversation at nauseam, but thank you so much, Mr. Tshwane Nzima. We've heard what you have to say. We'll take this, of course, later in the evening if need be, or tomorrow, just so we are able to reach a far more broader audience. But I really, really want to appreciate your presence and the kind of issues that you put on the table, just how far you've gone in protecting Dr. Sam Nzima's legacy. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you very, very much.
All right, that's Mr. Tshwane Nzima joining us on the line. In fact, I told you the last time he stopped short of blaming the government for not giving the necessary honor to a man who's central to the struggle of South Africa. We're going to be bringing in Professor Nalini Moodley, who's going to come in a moment. What a rousing speech that Prof gave there, to a resounding applause. And I'm going to touch on a number of issues with Prof. Now sitting down. It's really a pleasure, Professor, as you sit down to be chatting to us here, but it's going to be an important conversation just to dissect what Prof was earlier on saying. I think she has gone in depth in terms of the analysis. She has gone deep in terms of explaining the picture and saying this is more than just a picture. She's joining us on the touchline, Professor Nalini Moodley. I'm sure you saw the reaction from the crowd. I'm sure you saw the mood from the crowd. Everybody stood literally up once you concluded that speech. Prof, why is this day so important? We'll get to the part of the arts at a later stage, but why is this day important? And maybe I might add, are we doing justice to a day like this in terms of how we celebrate it?
Thank you so much. It's a very difficult question to answer. Why is this day so important? It is a day that is critical in our memory as a country, in our collective memory. And if we do nothing else, we must remember. We must not and we can't afford that. So it's really important that every generation understands the public holidays. Yeah. What is good enough to celebrate it with is a big question. Like I said, is a public holiday enough? Oftentimes public holidays, and this is a global phenomenon, it's not unique to South Africa. Public holidays just become a day off work. It's a day you can sleep late, have, relax. But how many of us actually reflect on the importance of that day? Whether it's Youth Day or Human Rights Day, Women's Day, we need to think about why these days were carved out as public holidays. We need to think about, is a musical enough? Is a movie enough or a lecture enough? But all it tries to do is amplify that day in meaningful ways that allow you to understand the importance of it for your own being, your own presence, and the future of this country.
And maybe I may have to ask, because there are a number of questions that you've raised, I may have to ask Prof, for you to draw a little forward, just so there's better audibility there. So what lesson do you think we failed to learn? I mean, it's 50 years on, and all we see is a picture. But from this picture, people were talking about using the power of the picture to even introduce justice, to even bring justice. From your point of view, though, what lessons have we failed to learn as a country from this tragic history?
One of the biggest things we must learn, even from this photograph, is the question of, or the issue of urgency. Everything in the photograph is urgent. Hector Peterson rushed to the hospital. Antoinette is screaming. There's urgency. We can't just take a stroll there. And that's something we must expand on. Every single thing we want to do, we want to take our time about. Yeah. We have reached an unfortunate plateau around complacency. We take things for granted. We have a culture of entitlement. We want, and we're not prepared to sacrifice to get the things we want. So the sense of urgency is as they are running, he's running with this dying child. We need to run with our country to speed up the changes we want to see in this country. We can't have youth who don't go and vote. We can't have youth who don't want to be involved in the political dialogues of the country. We can't want youth who just demand but don't do the work. Students at university, the only thing you can do, the VC said, education, education, education. It might not bring you money immediately, but if you are complacent and you don't move with speed and get out of the university, pass your subjects, receive a good success, and get a job and contribute to make the place a better world, that would be the biggest tragedy if when we do not see what the photo for what it is. We need to see the photo for what it is. It's a moment of urgency and crisis. That's where we are. And the fact that we've taken so long to get to this point, we're not, how much has really changed? That's what we need to ask ourselves.
And once again, one of the issues, Prof, that you raised, as I'll let you go in a moment, is of course the fact that the picture itself has had this meteoric rise, but the person behind the picture has had the truth around the picture being completely distorted. How do we ensure that imbalance does not happen, and what's the impact of, what are the dangers of allowing such to happen?
That's a tricky one to answer, because remember, in photography, a photographer captures an image and the photographer himself disappears, and the image stands. The image is to rise. And if it is to go on that meteoric trajectory, that is wonderful. And the artist needs recognition. But when, in Nzima's case, he became this exiled, internal exile in South Africa because he wasn't given the recognition artwork that he created. He wasn't given the IP, intellectual property of the photograph. And he was given the intellectual property of the photograph not after the photograph had been given for all and sundry. So when you extract the power of an image, you actually marginalize the artist, and you create a culture of poverty and impoverishment for artists. So artists need to be recognized as real change makers and history makers. They take photographs, they make music. We've lost Abdullah Abraham. He was a change maker. Artists, we can't exist in a world without artists. And we need to recognize their work and them as well. We can't recognize their work in their isolation. So we need to recognize that, yes, we want the artwork to exist, but we also want to give credence to the artists and recognize that they are the owners of their ideas.
In strictly a minute, Professor Moodley, 50 years on, what do you think Dr. Sam Nzima is challenging us to do with this particular picture? In fact, you made a good point that you can't look at this picture as part of the history because it is happening within the current context and maybe well into the future as well. Just less in a minute, what do you think Dr. Sam Nzima is challenging us to do and think as a country if we are to continue his legacy and continue to protect the hard-earned right as the freedom right?
He's challenging us to do more than just admire a photo and respect the image. He's challenging us to think about what is the role of these young people in the future. If we look at these lives lost, there was 176 odd children that were killed. Those were children and potential for this country. Future leaders, engineers, doctors, lawyers, teachers, artists, whatever. We need to think about that. What is the potential loss to this country? If we get rid of unemployment, if we get rid of poverty, homelessness, gender-based violence, all these things impact where we are and where we are going. We need to recognize you have a role to play. You can actually turn the dial to eradicate gender-based violence and poverty if we all go with a collective mindset. That day of 1976, all those students were marching for one thing. No violence. They were just saying, can we be educated in a respectful manner that recognizes us as human beings? That's what we should be thinking about. Can we respect each other? Bodies, people, language, culture, tradition, whether you are color. Look at the wars in the world. That's just because human beings can't seem to see each other as human beings. We want to amplify difference. Let us amplify the greater good of who we are and pull the youth together to say we need to move towards the collective good, not just for this country, because we are global citizens, but for the world.
There you go, Prof. I must tell you, you've been more than sport, really. You've been more than great sport in that speech itself. And I want to thank you so much for making time for us. I hope we can continue with this conversation outside this platform.
Perfect.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Prof.
you so much for your...
Professor
Thank
Nalini
you
Moodley,
inviting me. Thank you.
Joining us on the touchline, important conversations that were had here as we wrap up proceedings live from the Mbombela campus out in Mpumalanga. Is the 6th Dr. Sam Nzima Memorial Lecture. I may have to wrap it up here, taking the roads now, heading over to the Gauteng province out in Pretoria, where we will hand over the control there. Let's go live now to our Gauteng studios out in Pretoria. Mobake Moke, Rapping Matters here, live from Mbombela.